If you don't have enough money saved for your retirement, like me and millions of other people, you're not alone. Welcome to the Wise Retirement Podcast. We'll learn how to invest, save, and earn more toward a comfortable retirement. Hi, I'm Angela Kay.
And I'm Reginald Thornton, along for this ride as well. Did you know that 20% of Americans age 50 and above have no retirement savings at all? Even worse, 3 times that amount are concerned that they don't have enough saved for a comfortable retirement.
Reg and I will talk with experts in their field, explore catch-up strategies, share success stories that we hope are inspiring, and learn about family wealth-building techniques that actually work. We'll also break down those complex financial topics into clear, actionable steps that everyone can understand and use.
Welcome to the ride, everyone. So in this episode of the Wise Retirement Podcast, we're going to talk about building wealth, even if you're starting from zero.
Let's face it, most of us haven't even talked about money or mindset growing up, let alone to our children, but we can change that starting now, building generational wealth.
Yes, indeed. And by the way, I'm Reg, and you're listening to the Wise Retirement Podcast, where we believe it's never too late to change your financial future or your legacy. So hit subscribe and join us on this financial journey.
Right, Reg, and I'm Angela Kay. Today, we're joined by Dr. Marlon Fuller, or better known as Doc, who is a visionary leader, educator, and founder of Cool Kids. Cool Kids is an organization dedicated to changing families and how they understand and build wealth.
Right. And so through Doc's work with Cool Kids, he's helping young people and families gain something many of us never ever received: a real financial education. Be sure to stay with us until the end, because Dr. Fuller is going to share what families can start doing right now to change their financial future. So let's get into it.
Yeah.
Dr. Fuller, welcome to the show today, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well, Reg. Hey, how's it going? Nice to be here.
Good. We're happy to have you. So tell us a little bit about Cool Kids.
Oh boy, Cool Kids is my labor of love. Is something that, where I say passion plus potential equal purpose, and that's exactly what it is. And so Cool Kids, my wife Christina and I, we started about 10 years ago, and the focus is youth empowerment. And so we're here to educate, empower, and equip the youth with all of the things that we wish we had as kids. And so, as we get older, and I'm in my 40s now, but as we get older, we realize there were certain things that we needed and didn't necessarily have, especially for myself, at least, coming up from a lower socioeconomic area, really understanding that there was things that were lacking. Not only mentorship in the community and guidance, but also in my household. So Cool Kids is really built to, like I said, empower the next generation with education that can really produce multi-generational impact. And so that's what we're focused in on, particularly around financial literacy. And so for financial literacy, we focus on ages all the way from elementary school, which will be at the Atlanta Supercluster, doing some education there for a bunch of younger elementary school students. But we go all the way up to college. And so we've done stuff at the University of Connecticut, which is my alma mater, a lot of different locations, and currently in New York City doing a financial literacy credited course at the World Trade Centers. From elementary to college age, Cool Kids is focused on empowering the next generation with financial literacy, because most schools don't teach it. Most parents don't know it if they weren't taught. And it's something that is going to be super impactful, not only now, but when they grow up and get their degree. And that's what we're striving for.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's good. I used to always say, once I got out of high school and I got into college and you got in the working world, and you said you were in your 40s, and I kind of chuckled to myself thinking, yeah, I remember being in my 40s. But think about, I used to always say I want to go back to my high school once I got out into the working world and have a conversation about simple things like checkbooks or understanding things that nobody really ever talked about, credit, other financial things that, you need to understand going through life. So I'm happy to hear that you guys cover financial literacy from A to Z.
Yeah, A to Z, and I think, there's, a lot of times we think kids are too young to have these conversations at the dinner table. Now, I just don't believe that. When you look at it, particularly what we do is edutainment. It's something that legendary hip hop rapper, artist, musician, philanthropist, KRS-One said, when you mix the medicine with the candy, when you have education mixed with entertainment, that's really our sweet spot and how we've been able to engage the youth and empower them. But if you look at a nursery rhyme, I think we can all go back and do our colors maybe in Spanish, or, just give a nursery rhyme. We can, execute on that and remember it decades later. And I think that's the same thing with music. Just that, my belief is that music has been hijacked and has a negative frequency a lot of times, especially when it's focused on poor, Black, Hispanic, underprivileged communities. There's a lot of negativity in there. And so our thought process was like, let's utilize this avenue for positivity. Let's communicate this message and be griots in our community, passing down like the Africans and the diaspora did, from one generation to the next with storytelling and education and information. And so through music is how we've looking to educate the masses. And at this point, we've had around 40,000, upwards of 40,000 kids that have gone through our program nationwide. And it's extended even into the Caribbean, into Europe, into Africa. We have 3 schools in Ghana that are utilizing our financial literacy based education that's music based, and it's just really extended beyond there. And when we look at each one teach 10, is one of the things that I talk about. I think that ripple effect, if we're teaching 40,000 kids and they're each empowered to teach at least 10 others, we're having a ripple effect going on. And I believe we're all pebbles. I think God has created us to be pebbles with a purpose. And so, but pebbles can create ripples and ripples can create waves. And I think that's what we're doing right now.
We're doing it together. That makes good sense. So when you think about, we're going to get into the family legacy piece because that's important, and how we pass it down within our own families, the information. But let's start with mindset, because when you're working with the kids about money, what is the mindset shift that should come first? In other words, should the kids start thinking about earning or investing or saving first when it comes to money? And why is it important?
Yeah, well, and great question. I think, first you have to earn. And so, we're not giving handouts, of course. So we're talking about what can you do in order to earn. And so that could be chores. It just depends what age the kid is. And, if you're talking about high school, you're working as a bagger, or you're working, name a different job. If you're doing something that you're getting paid for versus something that you're getting an allowance for, or some parents, they provide money for kids when they get good grades. That's what my wife and I do, because we want to encourage them in order to be excellent. And so whatever you're doing to earn money or receive money, that's the first step. And then it's about budgeting from there. So there's a 50-30-20 rule where 50% is the stuff that you need. And we think that at that age, what you need to do is invest. 30% kind of go to wants, and then the other 20% you can give to philanthropy, and so that you can donate your money, time, or efforts. So so it's a mixed component with the stuff you need, the stuff you want, but definitely need to save. So we're just talking about that mindset shift when you start talking to students. Say, look, do you want to buy Nikes, or do you want to own Nike stock? And so do you want to wear the Jordans, or do you want to own the company that makes the Jordans? And so we talk about being owners and not consumers. And it's a shift that, especially with elementary and middle school kids, because that's really at a malleable state where their mind is just kind of, receptive to information. And so when we're talking to them about like being a boss, it's like, do you want to be an employee, or do you want to be a boss? And that mindset shift is like getting them to understand, like, even at an early age, you can be making boss moves. And so we encourage our students, say, look, if you're getting money from allowance, if you're getting money for Christmas, your birthday, excuse me, all of these things, if you're getting money, like, how are you utilizing this? You can utilize that as a boss by investing your money and by saving and budgeting and still go out and do the things that you want to do. So we're not talking about, not doing those things, but it's immediate versus deferred gratification. And so when you have these conversations and repeat these conversations, when you educate the parents and they're having dinner table conversations, and we do free master classes for parents as well. But now it's almost like church. So it's like Sunday school at church. You have the kids learning and the parents learning as well, and then you can go home and have that discussion and have everybody at the same table. So I think it's a collective mind shift where you have to have an outside kind of factor to educate, because a lot of kids don't want to listen to their parents. I have four kids, ages 10 through 27. So when you have an outside factor that they trust, respect, and can learn from, and then you couple that with that education in the household, you have a lifelong process that you can amplify.
But listening to you talking, you talked about, I know your focus is the kids, and I heard you mention parents as well. So generationally, when you think about, from generation to generation, there tends to be, if you don't have, I know at one point we spoke with somebody and they talked about exposure. And a lot of times if you don't have a level of exposure, then you can't expose your kids, or you're not open to a lot of exposure as it relates to, bringing things to the attention of your children or anybody in your family. So that said, generation to generation, what do you think might be some of the biggest pitfalls people have that keeps that generational wealth gap where it is?
Well, I think exposure is important, right? And demystifying investing. And so I say with exposure is expansion. Once you know something exists and you're exposed to it, you know the possibilities. Like, I wasn't always Dr. Fuller. Like, if you know that I came from the hood and between lower socioeconomic environments in the ghetto, inner city, all the way to mobile home trailer parks. I wasn't always, and now I'm a real estate investor and have multiple streams of income, but that wasn't always the case. But once you get exposed to somebody that made it, from the trap, as they say, and made it through the other side, now you know that if they can do it, you can do it. And so I think some of the gaps are maybe, not necessarily building that resilience. They said, there's that saying that we've all had that, hard times create strong men create easy times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. I think, when you expose the kids to like all of the possibilities, you expose them to all these different things, it makes them stronger. I think that, some of that gap is that, when we talk about exposing our kids, we say, look, we lived a rough life, and I want my kids to have all the things that I didn't have. My wife and I don't believe in that. It's like I am who I am right now because I struggled. And when I talk to the students and I say, look, I was living in New Haven, Connecticut, in a 3-family house in high school, and whatever the temperature was outside, that was the temperature inside, because we ran out of oil heat. Probably after a week or two, we didn't have any more money. So it was like the last 2 or 3 weeks of the month, it was like we didn't have heat. So if it was 20 degrees outside, it was 20 degrees inside. And so I would sleep with 2 blankets, a hoodie, sweats. And, if my head came up out of the sheets or the blankets, you can see my breath.
It was a little chilly,
And so like when I tell the students that, look, said like, I am no better than you. If I can do it, you can do it. But you have to believe in yourself. And so we teach the mind, mouth, and heart principle. So if you think it through your mind, speak it through your mouth, and believe it in your heart, you can do anything. You just got to put action to all of that. And so the gap is like helping the parents understand is just like, you may be 40, 50, 60. It's never too late. It's better because of compound interest if we can get these kids into investing, into saving, because now they have what Einstein called the 8th wonder of the world, which is compound interest. So if you start saving in your 60s, you don't have many years into retirement. But if you start saving when you're 10, by the time you're 65, 67 for retirement, you have 50 plus years of savings, now that compound interest. And so what we do is that we help with that mindset gap and that wealth gap by helping them understand, like, what are your goals and what are you willing to do now in order to get to your goals? And you're just like, look, you know, and then I bring in celebrities and influencers and things like that to have these conversations. They're like, look, you following me, but I'm following Doc. That's what my
Right.
nickname. You know, I'm Dr. Fuller, but I've always been Doc. My father, his nickname was Doc, so I was always like Doc Jr.
So you were Doc before Doc.
Yeah, I was
Duh.
Doc before Doc.
Right.
Yeah, I
Right.
was Doc before Doc. But they said, look, you know, you're following me and other influencers. You should be following Doc. And guess who I'm following? I'm following people that have been there and done it. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. I'm trying to
Right.
duplicate success. And so, like, I listen to people like Warren Buffett and Robert F. Smith and Carlos Slim. You know, you talking about black billionaires, Hispanic billionaires, white billionaires. I have a multitude of different people that I can learn from. Ray Dalio, a bunch of different people that have information, and I'm a forever student. And so I tell the students that, look, if you want to impact this wealth gap, you have to continue learning and you have to put action to the knowledge.
Now, you know what that reminds me of, Doc, is that parents are, I think, one of the most influential things that kids have in their lives, right? So
Right.
we do have these influencers and Doc and these billionaires, but parents are there in the homes. As parents, what roles can we play, like to teach our kids and our grandkids? I'm talking about adult kids, because a lot of us are in our 40s, 50s, and 60s and have adult kids.
Hmm.
What
Yep.
role can we play as parents to help this process along?
I mean, I think it starts with modeling what you want your kids to do. I mean,
Mhm.
if you're telling your kid you're overweight and I want you to work out, but you see, yeah, you as the parent, you're smoking, eating a bunch of donuts, not exercising, doing the
Right.
wrong thing. You know, they see you drunk and high and all that stuff. How can you tell them about health and all of these different things? I think the same thing holds true. I had one of my students in my class at the World Trade Center. He said, look, my mother just went and bought a brand new Jeep, and we're still renting. Because I asked the
Mm.
kids, I said, I want you all to just have an honest
Mm-hmm.
conversation with the other kids in your class. And so I have 24 juniors in high school in New York, and we have this class there. And one of the students was vulnerable. He said, look, I know what you're saying, but I'm dealing with something different in my household where I actually have to talk to my mother and say, look, you didn't need
Mm-hmm.
that Jeep. You know, like we could have had a used, you know, Jeep. You didn't have to get the brand new one because, like, you know, if you have enough money for a brand new Jeep, we have enough money potentially to get a condo or a house outside the
Mm-hmm.
city, or we can move down south. I mean, we have options, right? And so I think as parents, we have to model what we want our kids doing. And because there's something that Jay Prince from Rap A Lot Records said. He said, when it comes to teaching and education, it's just as much as what is taught as what is caught. So what you're saying through your mouth is one thing, but what they catch you doing and what they see you doing is also
Mm.
important. And so what's caught and taught needs to be in, you know,
Sync. Yeah.
in sync. And so I think for parents, that's super important. And a lot of times, if you didn't learn good money habits, and I'll tell you, I was the first one of my siblings, and I'm the youngest boy. My father had 13 kids, and Papa was
Wow.
rolling. I was
Yes,
rolling.
indeed.
So 13 kids by 5 women, and I'm
Okay.
just being honest. You know what I mean? 13 kids, 5 women, but I was the youngest. But we
Okay.
all grew up together, and you know we still are real close. So we don't even look at all this and half that.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah. For
siblings.
sure.
But the youngest boy, I saw a lot of things from my older brothers. Now my older brothers, they had a new Jaguar, a new Benz, new cars, and they were still renting in the hood. And I was just like, that
Mm-hmm.
don't make a lot of sense because like that Jaguar back then in the 90s was, you know, a 40, $50,000 car. I was
Wow.
actually the first one to buy real estate out of all my older brothers because I
Mm.
realized that, and what I had to do is really just do the opposite of everything that I saw growing up. Because so I looked at
Mm-hmm.
TV like the Cosby Show and the Huxtables, and you know a different world to look at HBCUs. I see you have Clark Atlanta, you know, so like Hillman and
Always. Yeah.
yeah, you know,
Yeah.
there was things we saw that was positive. I actually had to do, unfortunately, the opposite of everything I saw because my father, when I was 10, he got locked up and did 8 years federal penitentiary. I lost three brothers before I graduated college. So
Mm.
like, it was. You know, it was lots of trials and tribulations growing up. But I'll tell you that, sometimes, you just have this vision and you have mentors and people around you that can guide you to where you need to be. But, it's just about how bad you want it and where you're looking to go in life.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, you said something earlier that kind of leads me to my next thing when you talked about one of your students who said that, the mother has bought a brand new Jeep that they're renting, and how do I have these conversations with people? And so when you're dealing with families, there's an emotional component there. And so are you guys with your Cool Kids organization, are you teaching kids how to have these conversations? Because as you said, when you're seeing one thing but you're being taught another, and you know that ultimately you need to do this to get that, but you're living in this. Like are you is there something that's in your program where you're teaching these kids how to have these conversations, or to be receptive to them even though you know, they're living in this life, but this is what they want. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. We haven't done that. And Reg, that's a really good idea because we haven't equipped the
Yes.
kids necessarily with how to have these conversations.
Yep.
Thankfully, there's AI, and actually, I'm going to bring this up because I'll be in New York next week to teach. I'm going to bring that up. So, I believe in taking the information and repurposing it and amplifying it.
Absolutely.
Some people call it shamelessly stealing, but I call it like being transparent and regifting the game that you were given. Like Snoop Dogg
Absolutely.
said, yeah,
Yeah.
the game is to be taught, not bought. So
Yeah.
I want to give the kids a few lessons in regards to like maybe some things that they can do in order to educate their parents. Now I haven't thought about this before, so I'm gonna have to do a little bit of homework because part of it is around motivational interview, and this is a
Yep.
concept that they found during drug abuse, addiction, alcohol abuse, in regards to like helping people see that there's a disconnect between what they're doing and their goals. And I think a
Yep.
lot of times
Mm.
kids can understand these concepts and help their parents to understand like, look, mama, you just bought that Jeep, but you keep complaining every week
Right.
bills. Like, how can we pay the bill and this car note? And the car note
Right.
comes with expensive insurance. And a Jeep, by the way, it only gets 15 miles to the gallon when there's some cheaper things that you could be getting
Right.
right now. So like we can equip the students with some motivational interviewing skills, and I'm glad you said
Right.
that. I'm gonna enact that like literally next week because they need to have these conversations. Now we do empower the students with information, but as we know, students are the influencers now. They know social
Mm.
media, TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, and all this
Mm-hmm.
stuff. They know editing video. They know how to do all this stuff with AI,
Yep.
Grok, chat, name it. So they understand all these things, but I think if we continue to power the youth with the skills that they can have these conversations, they can be the financial lead in their family. And I see a
Yep.
lot of our students doing this. And so with our program, what we do, Reg and Angela, we not only educate them around financial literacy, but we gift them $10 in stock vouchers that they can then go on to invest. So we're not just telling them about investing. We've given over $200,000 to the students in order to start their first brokerage account. And so with these brokerage accounts, they can buy gold, commodities, ETF, which are
Mm.
exchange traded funds, or they can buy stock. I think one of the things we can do probably a little bit better is maybe give them the skill set, like you said, in order to engage their parents in a different way. And a lot of times they have stock before their parents do because we're talking
Mm-hmm.
to kids from very low
Mm-hmm.
socioeconomic environments that, some of these parents don't have a 401k, IRA. They only have maybe a month or two worth of savings in their savings account, and they're, a decision away from being
Yep.
bankrupt. So
Yep. 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 Look, that's all a part of it. And I just wanted you were talking. I just wondered because I know it's difficult sometimes as adults. It's difficult as an adult sometimes to have an adult conversation about the things that you're seeing and you want to move in a different direction. So I just wondered if you were equipping the kids early because look, if they're getting this information early, by the time they hit 15, 16, 17, they're going to be way ahead of the game.
oh yeah, we've had kids that started investing with us when they were 9 and 10 and received our voucher. set up a brokerage account with that voucher. And years later, I hear from students randomly and parents, they're like, Dr. Fuller, I have $2,000 now. I have $3,000 now. Because I tell them, I say, look, for Christmas, for school report cards, all of that stuff, put half of it into savings and
Yep.
investments, really. And then they be like, well, what do I buy? I'm like, I don't know. It's just like S&P 500. So get an
Start
ETF.
there.
Yeah, get an ETF for the S&P 500. Now, Warren Buffett, there was a hedge fund manager which bet Warren Buffett years ago that my investments as a hedge fund manager outdo your advice of just doing ETF and S&P
Hmm.
500.
Hmm.
Warren Buffett won.
Yeah.
So, like when you get 500 plus stocks that you're invested in, some going to be up, some going to be down. Like
Absolutely.
the laws of averages, as long as you invest on a a consecutive cycle. You don't just want to
Yeah.
invest in
Yeah.
January. You want to invest. If you got $10, put that $10 January, February, March. It's dollar cost
Com-
averaging, and you will probably, if you look at the S&P since its inception, around 10 to 11% annually that it's grown, and that's
Yep.
like better than almost any fund out there.
Right.
Yeah.
And
So say ten
compounded.
percent annual.
Yeah,
Yeah. And if you compound that over time, time is your friend, and you're starting them out young, Dr.
Hmm.
Fuller. And what I see is these kids learning from you through song, through workshops and webinars, and them teaching it to their parents. Why not?
yeah,
Say, look,
yes.
this is what I'm learning, Mom. Did you know this? Or Dad, this is this and
Hmm.
that. And then, their parents will respectfully maybe start changing some things around for themselves personally from
Hmm.
hearing from their kids.
Right.
It's all about, like you said, exposure earlier. We just weren't exposed to it. But if their kids are getting exposed through your program and other areas, and then they're exposing it to their parents, that to me is each one teach 10, as you say,
Yeah.
Yeah.
is what can change generations down the line.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
For
it's
So,
a
sure.
and it's a ripple effect, like when you have a student or your child coming home excited about something is infectious. It's like the parent like, whoa, you're excited about that? Like, yeah, 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 look at this. And now when they see LeBron James wearing Nikes, they say, LeBron James works for me because I own a piece of Nike, and because I own a piece of Nike, I'm a boss, I'm a owner, and we hired
Right.
LeBron James to do that
Right.
Nike. So you have them thinking as a boss, and I think that's
mhm,
ownership over consumership is the name of the game.
Yeah.
We have to get out of spending, spending, spending. If you listen to these songs, it's free promotion sometimes, but a lot of
mhm,
times these musicians are getting paid to promote. So when they're talking
Yeah.
about Louis Vuitton, Gucci, Fendi, Balenciaga, they're getting paid for that product placement, and they're getting the products for free to wear and
mhm,
post on their social media. So then it has people in lower socioeconomic situations and just, globally looking to emulate what they see. Well, if you see all of these people, you're like, oh, well, I want Balenciaga too. But like those
mhm.
are $1,500, $1,000 shoes and red bottoms and Louboutins. They got that for free. And you want somebody
Yeah.
to spend $2,000 just because they painted the bottom of some hills red. Those are
Right.
really like $10 hills that's
Mhm.
painted red, you know. So it's like the value isn't there. Louis Vuitton, you can't even put that purse. A lot of these designer bags, you can't put it by a stove because it's made of plastic and it'll melt. It's not even leather. It's not even leather. It's plastic. So you can't put it by heat. It's like it's around like an iPhone, for example. An iPhone, if you break down the parts, it's only around $50 to $60 worth of parts. In
Mhm.
between is all of the you're paying for institutionalized investors and all of these different things and commercials and salaries, but the actual parts are around $50 to $60, and we pay $1,000 to $1,200 for iPhone. Nike, I think they're around $25, if that,
Mhm.
to make, and then we're paying 150. So there's things that just because there's a high dollar associated to something doesn't mean that it has that value, and it doesn't mean that you need it. So we teach the kids those kind of concepts. It empowers them, and then it gets them excited about savings, and that excitement ends up being infectious for the parents, and they're like, look, you can't have more money in your account than me.
Right,
There
So
you
right,
go.
right.
it becomes like
Competition.
a challenge, a competition for sure.
A family challenge. I like that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
for sure, for sure. So let me ask this question. What do you think a financial legacy is? Do you think it is just all about money, or do you think it encompasses a whole host of things?
Well, I think like you can teach somebody how to fish, or you can give them the fish. I think
Mm,
part of financial literacy is teaching them how to fish. Because if you have somebody that really know how to get money, they can go bankrupt and get that money back because they
yeah, that's
understand the
true.
Yeah.
fundamental principles, right? They understand networking, associating yourself with, key people that you need. I give the Voltron kind of analogy. Everybody have to connect. We're going to
Mm,
be stronger together. And you look at other cultures,
Mhm.
and they're doing some of those things. And so I think, because of slavery, redlining, Jim Crow, institutionalized racism, all the different things, black folks in the diaspora have been separated intentionally. And we're
mm,
having to relearn things that we already knew. Like, look at Mansa Musa. He shut down economies when he came through your country because he had so much gold and he had so much people that were following him. And I know they're doing a
yeah.
movie in regards to him that's coming out maybe
Okay,
in another
good.
year or two. But it's not that black folks and folks of African ancestry don't know financial literacy. But, if you look at what's going on with books being taken away about black history in these
Hmm.
times. If you look at like black folks weren't allowed to read or have books and things like that, the information was taken, and knowledge was taken, and now we're regaining that. So it's not like I say financial literacy, but it's almost like financial re-empowerment because the information was there, it was taken. It's not that black folks don't notice stuff. It's just that it was kept from them. And even if you look at the laws, it was only with the Fair Housing Act, and so you look at maybe 50 plus, a little over 50 years that you can own wherever you can buy wherever you wanted to live.
Hmm.
And you know there's restrictions previously. If you look at the 60s and even the early 70s, there are restrictions where if you were black and Hispanic, you couldn't even get approved and you couldn't live in certain neighborhoods.
Yep.
So
Redlining.
yeah, with redlining, right? So when you look at how most wealth is built, it's built through real estate.
Mm,
And other races were given land. That like Malcolm X or Spike Lee, that 40 acres and a mule never came for black folks. And so, but other folks got land and was able to transfer wealth. And so black folks are kind of starting from the bottom because a lot of that wealth was taken, information was restricted. And so it's only been 50 years that we've been able to kind of do the things that we needed to do in order to regain and reestablish. But I think, with coming together, I think that's how we do it. And, we were intentionally separated, but now we have to be intentional about coming together.
together
And,
for sure.
like
Facts.
families, like at 18, we can't just be kicking out our kids and saying, all right, you're on your own. Because some
All right.
cultures, they say, look, go to college, come back and stay till you get
Mhm.
married, or
Wait
save up
till you get married.
save up some money for a down payment on a house, or I've already done that for you. So when you get out of school, I already have a down payment for you. And maybe I already have a 529, so you didn't even have to come out of school with a bunch of debt. We have to
Right.
start like having these kind of and I think as parents, we need
Mm-hmm.
to start saying no to ourselves. We
Mm,
have we have to stop looking for immediate gratification. We have to stop looking for these Jeeps, and we have to
That.
start looking
Yeah.
at like, what can I do right now to impact the next generation? And so,
yeah.
like if my wife and I, for example, if we didn't have kids, and I have 4 kids, ages 10 through 27, if we didn't have kids right now, we could have already retired. Because we are fiscally responsible. We say yes a lot, but we say no. We say yes to trips to expose them, but we say no
Hmm.
a
Experiences.
lot of times. Like I still shop at TJ Maxx and I shop at Sheen and Amazon
Yeah.
for my
Yeah.
clothes.
Yeah.
I'm not going to the malls. So we say no a lot, but the goal is to say no so your kids have the opportunity to say yes. And I think as
Mm.
parents, getting back to your original point, I think those are the kind of things that we have to say. But when you've gone without for so long, it's hard to say no continuously because you were
That's fair.
told no and restricted for so many
Mhm.
years. Like when I remember when I was living in New Haven, Connecticut, going to Jackie Robinson Middle School, we didn't have all of the stuff that the richer, more upper class school districts had. And so there was a lot of no's. Like I wanted to
Hmm.
play football, but I couldn't afford the pads. There was no
Right.
funding available for me to get
Mm.
pads. Other schools, they had all
Yep.
types of funding. So I think, but when we come from a situation when we didn't have a lot, once we get into a little bit of money, we was like, I deserve, I deserve, I deserve. Like, no, you don't deserve anything. If you
Right.
have kids, your kids deserve that. So we try to get parents out of saying that foolishness, I deserve this, I deserve that. And I think in
Right.
every generation, especially like we went to Ghana, my wife and I, we learned something interesting is that in Ghana, the grandchildren are named after the grandparents. So, but that happens every generation. And so while the parents are working, the grandparents are the ones taking care of the grandkids.
Mm.
Grandkids are named after grandparents. But if every generation does that, the parent has the ability to work, try to build wealth, but they have the support of the grandparent. Now, if you look at how things go, you got grandparents living over here, the the kids living over here, the
Right.
grandkids don't know the grandparents. We have to like come together not only as families but as communities.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, speaking of that, families, can you just briefly share a recap about the workshops? You mentioned that you have family workshops with the parent and the child.
Yeah, so we have a 24 part free, and all of our resources are free. So we don't charge for these master classes. I know some people are charging
Masterclass.
25, 50,000, $100,000 for these master classes, and
Well,
literally. If somebody just told you where to get the information, you can get the information from YouTube. They don't have there's like they
Hmm.
they're like keeping the information as gatekeepers. Unfortunately, is some people that I won't name any names, but there's a lot of people out there that have millions of followers. They maybe even look like you and I, and it's a lot of masterclass this, masterclass this.
Selling information.
They're selling information to people that need the information but can't afford it, and so but it's information that they can find online. And so we're kind of like Robin Hood. We rob from the rich and give to the poor. So we don't charge for any of our master classes. We have 9 master classes for adults, all the way from
Mm,
like life insurance and wills and
mm.
trusts, whether that be revocable or irrevocable trust.
Wow.
We have information about 529 plans. We have information about a 1031 exchange, which most adults have never heard of, but rich folks know what a 1031 exchange is because
Right, right.
it's like you won't pay capital gains if you sell a house or a property and put it in a 1031 exchange and then buy another property with that. You avoid capital gains tax. That's how rich
mm,
people don't pay taxes, right? But if you, as an adult, you've never heard of a 1031 exchange, you're like, what are you talking about? So we
right.
share all those things. We share about how you can buy real estate for pennies on the dollar with tax deeds and tax lien investing.
Right.
So, like, if your listeners or your subscribers don't know about this, folks in the hood, folks with $1,000, folks with minimal means can
Mm.
find real estate all throughout the country. Just Google and just you can do this on YouTube, Google it, or use. There's a ton of different AI engines that you can use with Claude AI,
Mm.
Mm.
ChatGPT, Gronk, Copilot, Gemini. Just type in tax deed investing or tax lien investing, and there's things that you can like. I'll give you an example. My wife and I, we bought a house in Gary, Indiana, a couple of
Mm.
years ago. We got it on the tax deeds auction for $1,500. Now there was fire damage with this property, but it was on a half an acre of land. We just cut the grass and listed it on realtor.com and had a realtor go by there with drones and cameras and all of that stuff.
Right.
We
Right.
sold it for 37,000. It
Not
was
bad
it
at
was a
all.
it was $1,500 to buy. It was around a
Right.
thousand dollars, about $1,000 for the lawyer, and we paid
Mm.
about $2,000 to clean up the lot. So now we're in still under $5,000, and we
Yep.
sold it. $37,000.
Yeah. So
So
Right.
like,
you $30,000 profit is not bad.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I can sell you a master class and tell you what I just told you and make it extended. Like basically, that's around 50% of what you need to know. I gave you the
Mm.
highlights, but that's
Mm-hmm.
like that's a lot of what you need to know. And we give that information away for free. We talk about budgeting, we talk about investing in stocks, and we don't go with one stock or another. We kind of believe in the Warren Buffett strategy where buy what you know and love. Because if
Mm-hmm.
you love it and know it, you're going to put the time, effort, and energy to research it. And you know the market, right? So like I'm not a sneakerhead. I get my shoes from Amazon. So I don't know
Right.
about the newest Nikes and all of this stuff. But if you are a sneakerhead, like you probably need to be invested in Nike or one of these companies that are in the
Mm-hmm.
Because
sneaker
you
industry.
understand it.
Yeah, because you understand it. So we tell them to invest in what you know or love, but do your homework first and then consult, your parents or a financial advisor. And so
Yeah.
like you have to have people around you. And there's a book called What Would Rockefeller Do?
I
And
need
and
to
it,
get that book.
yeah, that's a great book. And it compared the Vanderbilts versus the Rockefellers. And so the Vanderbilts eventually went broke, right? Because they didn't teach financial literacy and the tools
Mm.
to their offspring. And so now
Yeah.
you have Anderson Cooper, which is one of the Vanderbilts, but it's just like
Mm-hmm.
that's
Yep.
probably the only Vanderbilt that from
Yep.
bloodline. But the
Mm-hmm.
Rockefellers, you still know them, and because they surrounded themselves with these principles. And so, an estate planning attorney, a financial advisor, accountants, all of these different people, realtors, brokers. So, like with real estate, stock, wills, revocable trusts, and all of these things, this is how you protect your wealth, life insurance as well. And so,
Mm-hmm.
and then putting, the beneficiary of the life insurance as the trust.
The
And so, like,
trust.
as one person dies, the money goes back into the recycling kind of situation where the next generation gets that money. And you don't
Mm.
have to pay estate taxes because the insurance is paying the estate taxes. So you don't have to sell anything because the
Right.
insurance is paying the estate tax. So all of these things are what the rich kind of utilize, but we share all these things with our master classes for free.
Okay.
And we have some of my friends. They were like, "Yo, Doc, man, you could have made a fortune, with all the PPE, the PPD, whatever the checks were that they were getting."
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I just like, nah, I can't get this information because I needed this information.
Right.
Okay.
I was blessed enough to have somebody had told me or read a book or learned this information or had advised or learned the hard way through trial and error. So I can't sell this to people that I know that need it. So 9 classes we have for
Mm-hmm.
the parents. Coolkids.org is where they can sign up. And then it'll be coolkids.org/masterclass is for the
Okay.
parents. And then
All right.
coolkids.org/register for the kids. And it's a
Okay.
self-paced 24-part course. Literally, if kids take my course, and it's free, 24
Mm-hmm.
parts, it has questions and answers and all the resources, they'll be smarter than most adults. And I don't care, name an age, they'll probably be smarter than most adults.
Well,
I love it. I love it.
my next question to you was going to be, give us one thing that you feel we need to walk away from this conversation with, but you just gave us a whole bunch. But is there one thing you would hang your hat on if you were sitting down with somebody for the first time? Is there one thing you would say to them that you feel that they would need to take away from the conversation?
Yeah, and I think, and we didn't go into this a lot, but it's kind of how I live my life, and it's something that Dr. Frazier says a lot. He says, in life, you learn, earn, and then return. Earn.
Say that one more time.
So first you learn, so you go to school, right?
Hmm.
You get a specialty, then you earn money, and then after you've made enough money, you have to return, and so you have to give back. And
Hmm.
so my wife and I, we're in the give back season. We're in the return season.
Okay.
We've already learned, we've earned, and we're still learning. So I don't think that cycle stopped, but we're into returning. And I think if you look at how I believe we all were given genetic code, G code, in order for
Mm.
us to fulfill a mission. And so God
Mm.
had put something on our heart, and it's that thing that. And Steve Harvey says this. He say, "What do you love doing? What would you do for free? And how can you
Mm-hmm.
use that to help other people?" And that's what
Mm.
you should be doing. A lot of people love something, but they're like, that don't make any money, so I'm not going to do it. You know, what do you love doing? If you were a billionaire, what do you love doing? What would you do for free? Because you're not thinking about money, right? And how can you use
Mm,
that to help other people? I think if we couple those two thoughts, it's just about like let's learn, earn, return, and then utilize our passion and potential for purpose. And that's kind of what I'm here for. So I love
I
pouring
like
into
that.
the next generation. So
Right.
if anybody can get the highlights, that's what I would say. Financial literacy is one piece of that, but it's not just about, health is wealth as well. So I tell my
Mm,
students, I say, look, just as much as we're talking about finance, and we want you to do well in school, you also invest by the people you put around you.
yeah,
And what you watch and what you listen to is just as important as what you eat or drink. So like
That's the word. Yep.
that can affect you, right? And so
Mhm.
so we're talking about diet, exercise, health and wealth, but also your surroundings. Because your
mm,
network is your net worth.
that's right.
It is.
There it is.
Yeah. We want to have Dr. Frazier on the show one time. He's an OG of financial education and literacy. So
Well, I
it's
have
funny
I
you
have his
mention him.
cell phone number, so I'll connect you.
Okay. I met him
Perfect.
at a recent event. He was very, very kind.
Yeah, amazing individual, and for somebody,
He is.
that's 80 or 80 plus at this point, I
He's
think,
strong.
yeah, and his mind is sharp, but his
Sharp.
wisdom is next level. And he take what I appreciate about him is that he takes the time in order to pass down the knowledge. And so he has so much knowledge to share. And he's one of the ones, him, John Hope Bryan with Operation Hope. Those are some of the people that I look at too as fatherly or brotherly figures because I didn't have role models in my household. But I think that, you're not always going to have what you need in life, but what are you going to do to get what you need? And
Right.
so
You got
we
to
have
take
to,
those steps.
if you know something is missing, are you seeking what's missing? And I'm still learning every day.
Okay. We talked about encouragement, I think.
Yeah, I think you have covered it all there, Dr. Fuller.
Yeah. Now, did I cover about Lobecca? Because I do have to share one of the things that we do with our nonprofit is that I started a watch line. It's a wood watch line for men and women, and the watch line is not only short. It's the first two letters of Long Beach, California, which is where I was born, so Lobecca. But our slogan is "Love what you do." So that's where the LO comes from. Believe in
Okay.
your potential and care for others. Love, believe, and care. So 100% of our revenue, of our profits, go to coolkids.org to support our financial literacy efforts and to gift stock for the next generations. So anybody
Mm.
out there, you'll get a cool wood-based watch, very nice, styled out for the men and women, but it's a watch with a purpose. So literally, if you buy a Lobecca watch, Lobecca.com, like I said, is the URL. You're literally buying stock for kids because we don't make any money off of it. So it's one of those things where we're just not
Hmm.
talking about it; we're being about it.
Yeah, well,
Low
I
Becca.
told you earlier that I'll be visiting that website as soon as we finish our conversation.
All
And
right.
I was also going to ask you
Yeah.
about contact information. Where can people reach you to find out more about Cool Kids?
Well, you just said it. Coolkids.org is the URL. But if you want to know a little bit about me, I'm Googleable. So you can find me
Okay.
at Doc Fuller, docfuller.com. I do a lot of different things. I still work in corporate America. I own multiple businesses. I'm a keynote speaker. I have 6 books, which are on Amazon. So you'll find all of those books on Amazon. I'm working on my third financial literacy album. Some of my previous people on my album have been T.I., Chubb Rock, Keith Murray. But on my upcoming album, I have The Game, Jada Kiss, Cassidy, a lot of King Los, a lot of great artists that's going to be on that. So there's a lot of things going on. But I'll tell you this, I don't know what Trump is doing because I don't watch the news and I don't have time to follow politics. And I don't even get into politics and all of that stuff because sometimes it's divisive and it can just separate us even further. But
Hmm.
my point is, I can't tell you what's on the news because my wife and I, we don't have cable. We haven't had
Mm,
cable in 20 years. But I can tell you
wow.
about these kids. I can't tell you about these kids. So if you ask me about a sitcom, I probably won't know it. Reality TV, I don't know it. But when it comes to the kids and being on a mission, I can talk about that kind of stuff all day long. And those are the folks
Well,
that I look forward to connecting with.
And
that
twice on
really is the
Sunday.
most important thing, and you're right. You don't really need to bog your mind down with all this other foolishness because it's nonstop, and it would kind of sidetrack your mission.
Yeah, and I think we have, there's a lot of distractions out there, like sports. I went to UConn. I didn't watch any of the series, and I love basketball. It's just like I'm too
Mm,
busy,
right.
between work, my kids, and the community. I don't really have a lot of time, and so I think time is our greatest asset. That's what Chris Gardner, who they made the Pursuit of Happiness movie about.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
He told me that. We had an hour long conversation. And he said, look, time is your greatest asset. He also told me, he's just like, what kind of music you listen to? I said, I named off a bunch of different, from Otis Redding to Isaac Hayes to T.I.,
The
who's a friend of
OJs.
mine, and others, right? He's just like, yeah, but why are you listening to other people's thoughts instead of being in your own thoughts? Like, ooh. So he said, I listen to Miles Davis because it's just the instrument and I can like think and be in my own thoughts.
Hmm.
I said, I
Okay.
like that.
Interesting.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so
Jazz.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So I'm taking the information that I give and resharing it when I can.
And you're writing powerful lyrics for this new album. We gotta definitely tune into that and let us know when it's coming out so we
Yeah,
can
yeah,
check
and
it out.
I'll give you a little something from one of my old albums because I won't give you the upcoming stuff, but something on my old album is it's Dr. Doc, been in stock since '92, from Amazon to Google. Look at all the stock that I've been through. That ownership made dividends, which gave me a passive stream. Celebrities promote those brands, that makes them my street team. With just 100 in stock, compounded for 100 years at 10%, that's 1 million. Nipsey Hussle, be clear. I'm talking about it's a marathon. That's
Mm.
Nipsey Hussle, be clear. Ever wonder why? These holidays come plentiful, designed to keep us broke. Our spending is perpetual. Raise as you rise, be the change you wish to see. No more liabilities, cars, clothing, and jewelry. Gentrify your block, purchase land, crypto, and assets. Get write-offs on your business with those loopholes on your taxes. Invest in real estate, not ranges. I'm talking about Range Rovers. Invest in real estate,
Mm-hmm.
not ranges. Just 1031 exchanges. No capital
Mm.
gains. Buy and hold. Use a trust so the wealth changes. That's legacy work. Group economics, no debt. Here's the secret: health is wealth, because time's our greatest asset.
Health is
Right.
wealth.
A
Drop
lot
them
of
up
a
there.
lot of info in there.
Yeah, yeah.
That
If you
was.
pick that
That was a
apart,
lesson.
that's a master
Yeah.
class.
Yeah, no, that's a
Exactly.
lot of info in there.
Yes, indeed.
Masterclass right there. Oh my God, Dr. Fuller, thank you
Yeah.
so
I go
much.
by. I'm Doc. I'm Doc. We don't got to do
Okay,
all that.
Doc.
Yeah, just Doc.
Okay.
Fuller. Doc, we appreciate you for coming on our show today. And
And
you dropped a lot of knowledge, including in rap form. So thank you for
Right.
that.
Right.
well, Ange, Reg, I appreciate you having me for the Wise Retirement Podcast. This was an honor, a blessing. Thank you for giving me some time to just kind of share a little bit more about what my wife and I are doing with coolkids.org and some of our other initiatives out there. And thank you all for what you're doing. The time, effort, and energy you're putting into something that is needed. I can tell you that a lot of people need this information, and you're helping to reach them where they are. Not everybody likes TV or has a TV. Not everybody likes social media. There's a lot of folks that like podcasts, and as you're looking at what you're doing, I think you fill an amazing gap and have a lot of great content. So I wish you all the best, and I'm just a blessing to be here today.
We
Thank
appreciate
you.
that.
We receive it. All right.
All right. Well, if you've enjoyed the episode today, help us by hitting the subscribe on YouTube so that you never miss a show. Like and share and comment below so others can learn as well.
And check out our free resource on Substack for our action-packed newsletter and resources.
Yep. Well, we'll see you next week. I'm Reg.
And I'm Angela Kay, reminding you we're in this journey together. Until next time, take care.
Welcome to the ride. Thanks, Doc.
You're very welcome. Thank you.